everybody. Welcome to the briefing room on this Friday. I'm Devin Dwyer in Washington, joined by John Santucci, our senior investigative producer, and Mary Alice Parks, deputy political director. It's Super Bowl weekend, guys.
It is, and we all are knowledgeable on this topic. We're going to do great.
You have to stick with us to the end of the show to hear our predictions. Mary Alice is going to give her analysis. It's also her birthday on Sunday, so early happy birthday to you. Another person whose birthday it is, Jordan Phelps, will be joining us shortly from the White House, where the president is already weighing in today on the stalled negotiations on Capitol Hill to avoid another shutdown and fund new security measures at the southern border. I was struck, Mary Alice, how very quickly this thing has sort of fizzled. They met for 90 minutes this week, the negotiators. They're not there today. They won't be there on Monday. We have State of the Union on Tuesday, and now the president is just repeatedly panning
There was so much determination at the beginning of this week by both sides, bipartisan legislators that were saying that they were going to come to a deal. They were going to get this done, even though
optimism.
They couldn't get it done in the 5 weeks before. We talked to both Republicans and Democrats here in the briefing room about how they were going to keep it limited, but they were going to get a solution. Still, we knew hanging over all of it was what would the president be willing to sign. That's how a bill gets signed into law, right? The president has to sign it. And now we're just seeing more of that frustration. Why bother doing the work if the president is already saying he's not sure he'll sign it?
Well, and I think you have to remember the president in the New York Times just last night was saying, you know, I'm kind of over this. I mean, you are just seeing more and more a president really learning the job, learning how to deal with divided government. He's now got to deal with Chuck and Nancy more and more. And he is learning, Devin, that even though he thought he'd have this great relationship with Nancy Pelosi, be able to get a deal here, this is going to be really challenging. And at the end of the day, as we all know, that border wall is not coming from anything Democrats are going to pass in the House.
Yeah, he got schooled by Nancy Pelosi in the shutdown, 35 days, had to back off his threat. And now he's sort of throwing his arms up already. And Jordan Phelps today in the Oval Office or the Roosevelt Room, wherever he was, he's already back to talking again about declaring a national emergency. He seemed to suggest, Jordan, that it's all but certain that he's going to do this.
Yeah, Devin, he was in the cabinet room there, and really his argument was all over the map. That was what I was struck by. On one hand, he was arguing that the Democrats are making the country unsafe by not agreeing to build this border wall. In the next step, he was saying, it doesn't matter, I can declare this national emergency thing if I want to do that. But then he was saying, but you know what? It doesn't even really matter because we're already building the wall. I've already built a lot of this wall. So all of those statements obviously can't be true, Devin. But the president teased forward to his State of the Union address coming up this Tuesday, suggesting that that might be a place where he makes some news regarding whether or not he'll do this national emergency, but he didn't commit to it, Devin. So it's not a foregone conclusion.
Let's take a listen to what he had to say, Jordan, to hear his exact words on this. Here's the president a little earlier on the national emergency to build the wall.
We are doing things right now. I mean, we're building it with funds that are on hand, but we will be looking at a national emergency because I don't think anything's going to happen. I think the Democrats don't want border security. And when I hear them talking about the fact that walls are immoral and walls don't work, they know they work. And I think Nancy Pelosi should be ashamed of herself because she's hurting a lot of people. I think the Democrats should be ashamed of themselves.
So, John, break this down for us again and remind everybody, a national emergency, controversial thing, not uncommon. He has the power to do it according to most experts, but how would it actually work to build the wall? Can he get all of his wall if he does this?
He cannot get all of his wall. So what would happen with the national emergency is that if it is declared, they could build border wall on property that's owned by the Department of Defense. It makes up a little over 5% over what the overall border wall is. He could do that right away as soon as he wants. Now, that could be challenged by Democrats, legal experts on the outside, and also members of his White House counsel's team and the other agencies that would be involved here, which would be the Department of Defense and Homeland Security, have said this is going to be a very big hill to climb. And the one thing we have to remember here, this president, as we've all known, is very cognizant of the PR message here, right? He lost it on the shutdown. This was not a winner for Donald Trump. If he has to now go into the courts and battle with Democrats and loses a second time, That will not be good.
Well, and I think it's worth pointing out that it's not just Democrats. We have repeatedly heard Republicans, pretty senior Republicans, say that they are not interested in the president using this kind of authority.
They're worried about the precedent it would set.
The precedent they would set. I mean, the idea that a president could say, forget with what was legislated and what was appropriated.
Right.
I'm going to decide how I use funds.
Right.
That's something that has Republicans very worried.
But the main thing that just gets me on this, again, is that he would take this extreme step and it wouldn't even get much of a wall. It's so minuscule to think that he would create, to your point, such a precedent here. And it really wouldn't mean anything at the end of the day.
And Jordan, if he does declare the emergency, what sense are you getting on the shutdown? Would he effectively take shutdowns off the table? Is that something perhaps he could reveal maybe in the State of the Union next week?
Yeah, Devin, one word we're not hearing a lot of over here is shutdown. It doesn't sound like there is any appetite over on this side of Pennsylvania Avenue to go through that again. I think even though they don't want to admit it publicly, the White House is very much aware that they lost that battle.
All right, Jordan Phelps for us at the White House. Have a great birthday, Jordan. Thank you so much. We'll see you next week. Moving on now, the field try to unseat President Trump is getting a lot more crowded today. Cory Booker, Senator of New Jersey, Mary Alice, became the latest to throw his hat in the ring.
Right, obviously working to try to make history. Today is the first day of African American Black History Month, and it really sort of dovetails to the announcement that Senator Harris had. She announced on Martin Luther King Day. You really see these two African American senators making a name for themselves in another way by announcing these presidential runs. I was struck by how passionate and excited and just enthusiastic in some ways Cory Booker sounded this morning when he was on The View, sitting around with all those women. You got the sense that he is just itching to get out there and talk to people. He has a pretty proven, solid record of bringing people together. He was a mayor, an executive, and he clearly likes being out and connecting with folks. I imagine he will hit the ground running.
And he has a history of working with the Trump administration, criminal justice reform, as you were saying. Conciliator is sort of his brand here in Washington. A younger candidate, 49, not the youngest of the field, but former mayor of Newark. He actually stopped in the briefing room here a little while ago, shortly after making his announcement. Here's a little bit of his conversation with us.
It's really great to be here. Thank you for having me. And I just am one of those folks that knows in this country there are a lot of folks who are losing faith in this nation to be able to solve our problems. There are a lot of people who are feeling left out and left behind. In fact, there's a lot of folks who are beginning to believe that the forces tearing us apart are stronger than the forces holding us together. I don't believe that. And so I'm running to restore that faith in who we are together and what we can accomplish together. And frankly, that we can be a nation where the lines that divide us aren't stronger than the ties that bind us, where we could address the injustices and inequities and lack of fairness to make our country live up to its promise. So I'm excited about this road ahead to put my energy and ideas out before the American people. Look, we in Newark know that our city for years was demeaned, degraded. People had given up on it. People thought we couldn't accomplish anything. But when I was mayor, we pulled the city together, and we not only accomplished things, but historic things, the biggest economic development period in generations, jobs coming in, crime going down, our schools elevating. Now we're the #1 city in America for beat the odds schools, kids in poverty who are achieving. So I now know, I have a test case that we can do things other people don't think we can do when we pull together. And that's our history. American history is a perpetual testimony to the achievement of impossible things when we do them together. And we need leadership that's not going to divide us, but unite us, not denigrate some, but seek to elevate all.
Well, it was great to see in your video, you did point out that you're the only senator who goes home to a low-income inner-city community, and you make that a point of pride. You talk about it a lot. Do you think your peers that are running for the presidency are sort of out of touch with the experience of America's inner cities?
No, I'm not saying that at all. But I'm the only one in this race who had to manage thousands of employees, a city in the middle of a recession, which is a depression for inner cities. We managed through crisis, and we achieved things people said they couldn't do. And I've stayed put in the neighborhood where I first got my start, and will never forget the people that believed in me and gave me my first chance. And I do live with a sense of urgency. You know, I had a young man shot with an assault rifle on my block, at the top of my block last year. I had a young man, I go to my corner bodega or the bodega around the corner from me and see people who work full-time jobs who still use food stamps. Every single day I live with that sense of urgency that we've got to solve these problems and the knowledge that we can't solve them divided against each other. We have to find ways to come together to solve these problems.
And I want to ask you about that. You've prided yourself here in Washington, certainly with a reputation of being a conciliator, someone who brings people together. You're not afraid to work with Republicans. In fact, you just achieved some pretty historic legislation on criminal justice reform, working hand in hand with the White House to get that through. And you talk a lot about the need to love your enemies, love Donald Trump as part of that that plan to work together. How do you plan to do that with Donald Trump and take him on at the same time? How do you love Trump but also challenge Trump?
Well, you and I both are here because in the face of armed hate, people stood with unarmed love, whether it's civil rights marchers or suffragettes. We have come by showing that love isn't easy. It's hard. It's tough. It takes courage and the willingness to make yourself vulnerable. I think Americans have had enough of trash talking, Twitter trolling, demeaning and degrading, pitting American against American. I think that we want to be called yet again to our higher principles, our higher ideals, to our moral imagination. We are at our best when we look up and can do big things. You know, presidents that say, hey, we as a people, that moon is not a dream, it's a destiny. We're going to get there together. When Martin Luther King says he stands on the mountaintop and sees the promised land, he didn't say we're going to get there by beating those hate-filled people. No, he said we're going to create a beloved community and we will get there together. So we are all products of a radical, courageous love, and that's the story of America's overcoming injustice, overcoming inequality, overcoming hate. And I'm sorry, you don't fight fire with fire. That creates more fire. Don't fight darkness with darkness, as King would say. You bring the light, and that's what I'm bringing to this campaign. And I'm going to put that before the people. I believe in solving tough problems, addressing issues that affect all Americans. But I believe that the best way to do that is finding that common ground, as hard as it is sometimes, telling the truth, calling out injustice, but finding ways to work with people to get things done. There's no one lever to pull and the city changes. You've got to focus on people and the quality of life of people, and that includes interrelated issues. Healthcare is interrelated to kids getting a good education and not struggling with lead poisoning, which is environmental justice, safety going back and forth to the school. We need a comprehensive approach that deals with the real issues affecting Americans from the Great Plains to the Great Lakes, from the sea to shining sea. We can do better, and we all know it. We know we have common pain. What we need to get back to is that sense of common purpose.
You're apparently also a big fan of marching bands.
You know what? I'm a former football player, brother, and whether it's a Stanford band or my high school band, that music has always got my energy flowing. I'm glad that's what we used for this video.
Is there a story behind that group you used in your video?
Look, we are a city in Newark with incredible high school marching bands. From Week Wake to Shabazz, I'm just proud of my city and my young people. So getting them involved was really a delight.
Senator, thank you so much. Patriots or Rams?
I hate to tell you this, but the Saints, and they should be in the Super Bowl.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time, Senator Booker. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mary Alice, the field getting so much more crowded just this week. Let's put up the graphic of all the Democrats now who have formally announced either exploratory committees or pulled a Cory Booker and gone all in. Wow. There it is. And we still expect, what, half a dozen more potentially?
Potentially. Now, because some of these big heavy hitters have gotten in so early, it's possible they will intimidate others. And some who had floated the idea, who had considered it, might not jump in. But
we did see some bow out this week.
Absolutely.
Eric Garcetti, former Los Angeles mayor, for example.
Right, we're hearing rumors about some others. But I'm struck by just how many on that graphic are in the United States Senate. They have to work together. If Democrats are going to get anything done in the Senate, they're going to have to be pretty tight. And you know, Cory Booker talks about those women in the Senate who are also running as his sisters and sort of partners in crime there in the Senate. But that is going to get trickier for them to navigate because they have to beat each other if one of them is going to be the nominee.
Yeah, it's Kirsten Gillibrand Melania likes to talk about we're all friends, we're going to be supportive of each other and friendly. In fact, she tweeted today, great to be in this with my good friend, but at some point,
well, she said,
you have to take your friend down, throw a couple elbows. You wouldn't know anything about that.
No, we don't operate that way.
The end of Gillibrand's tweet was very clever, I thought. She said, I'm wishing him the best of luck, but not too much luck, because she would obviously like to win.
So it has begun. It's going to be a lot of fun. Shifting gears a little bit, we're to the Mueller investigation.
We're still fun.
That's why we have John Santucci here with us today. A couple big developments today, John.
Yeah.
This has been the week of Roger Stone. We started out the week with that unbelievable FBI raid at his home, the arrest, coming to D.C., the arraignment, the circus scene. I was over at Federal District Court today. He was back in federal court. What happened today?
So today was actually his first real court appearance. So, we had the first one in Florida, then we had the arraignment earlier this week. Now we're actually getting into the nitty-gritty of this case. And interestingly enough, the judge that is going to hear Roger Stone's case is the judge who's been dealing with Paul Manafort. And we know she has been very tough. She is a tough judge. And I think Roger Stone met his match. And really the big thing here is we all know Roger Stone loves the camera. He loves being on the press. And this judge made very clear she's considering a gag order. That is like taking oxygen away from Roger Stone, how he's going to survive. So they've got 10 days to respond, so we're not going to hear anything for a little bit in this case. But, as you guys reported yesterday here on the briefing room, there is a huge amount of evidence in this case. They have already said to the judge that they are going to need to take their time. They don't expect this to really be a speedy trial. There are terabytes, plural, of data that they need to go through here.
And as we wait for Bob Mueller to finish his report, and we're expecting that it could come fairly soon, but who knows? We're learning some new information about that Trump Tower meeting that Donald Trump Jr., Jared Kushner, Paul Manafort, others had with that Russian attorney right in the summer before the election. It's been the focus of the special counsel. It's been much criticized and discussed in the press, but you actually broke some news yesterday, John, learning that Senate Intelligence Committee investigators have now learned who Donald Trump Jr. was on the phone with immediately after that. Tell us why that matters.
So let's back up a little bit. So my colleague Matt Mosk and I have been working on this for the last couple of weeks, and what this focuses on is that just before the Trump Tower meeting on June 6th, Donald Trump Jr. has 2 phone calls with blocked numbers. Then he has another phone call on June 9th, the day of the meeting, with a blocked caller as well. Now, President Trump, for the longest time, has been known when he was in business, before his life here in politics, to call people from a blocked number.
So the suspicion has been that his son was perhaps in cahoots with him around this meeting.
Remember also, the president came out.
It.
Correct. But remember around that time, President Trump, then candidate Trump, came out, gave a speech. I hear there's some information coming about Hillary Clinton from abroad. So that was always piecing these little puzzle pieces together. Was this something that the president and his son were connecting information here? Were they talking? Correct. Big part of this case. What we've now learned in that Senate investigators have been able to actually get the phone records. They've subpoenaed them from the phone companies, figured out who the numbers were, and it turns out they were both 2 people called for these 3 phone calls. They were one, Howard Lorber, longtime Trump family friend, big real estate developer in New York. The other, Brian Franz, then the CEO of NASCAR, person who came out, endorsed Donald Trump during the campaign, big fundraiser for the Trumps during that era. And that's who the president's son was speaking to.
So the bottom line is it was not the president, which would suggest perhaps not as nefarious as suspected because of the block.
Yeah, and again, I think we just have to recognize that, when this story first came out, the Trumps were not forthcoming at first, right? They said this was just a meeting about adoptions, nothing happened. And then we quickly learned that they were actually trying to get dirt on Hillary Clinton here. So these phone calls had sort of raised everybody's suspicion. Was he talking to someone that maybe they didn't want anyone else to know? So it pops a little bit of the air out of the balloon, but let's not forget, the meeting did still happen. They did still seek dirt on Hillary Clinton. It is certainly possible that Donald Trump Jr. ran upstairs to the 26th floor of Trump Tower and relayed this information to his father. He has consistently denied that. We know he denied it under oath before the Senate Judiciary Committee in testimony they've already released. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens now with these congressional committees. Adam Schiff, the now chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, has said he doesn't buy it, and he plans on bringing Donald Trump Jr. back to the Hill.
All right, thanks for all of that, John. Lots to unpack, much more at abcnews.com from John's team there as well. As the president tries to put all that behind him, he told the New York Times, Mary Alice, he is all in for re-election, despite some speculation perhaps not. And it does seem like he's going to have a pretty good economic record going forward if things hold. Today we got some really good jobs numbers.
And that's going to be a central part of his campaign, and rightly so. We hear from voters all the time. They might not like what he tweets. They might not like a lot of the controversy swirling around this White House, but they feel good about the economic forecast. They feel like they are making a little bit more money than they did last time, and that is probably the single best thing that he has going in his favor. Jobs, jobs, jobs.
He was
He's
right.
There will,
a big number, we should say.
A huge number, more than was expected, and that is always good for the current administration. There will continue to be conversations, though, about wages and about income inequality. That's where I think the economic conversation will move during the campaign. Is a job enough to pay rent? Are people working 2 or 3 jobs? And that just huge disparity in income inequality, and whether the Republican tax bill close that gap or enlarge that gap, that's going to be the counter argument from Democrats.
And we're joined now by Alabama A&M professor and economist, Dr. Kristen Brody, who's been here in the briefing room before. Doctor, great to have you back with us. Give us your take on some of the things Mary Alice is talking about here, the numbers, particularly the wage report out today. We're seeing some good signs there.
Good afternoon. I'm glad to be back. The numbers do look good. Total non-farm payroll employment increased by 304,000 in January, and that was ahead of a projection of 165,000. So that's definitely a good thing. The unemployment rate increased a bit to 4%, up from 3.9 in December, but that was expected due to the government shutdown with 800,000 people being off work. So the numbers look good considering the shutdown.
And Dr. Brody, talk to us a little bit about, I also saw in the report that the December number, which was greeted with much fanfare, the jobs number, last month, 312,000 jobs created. That was actually revised down, relatively common, as you know, but pretty significantly. It was revised down to 220,000 jobs. That's a big jump down. Can you divine anything from that movement downward? Could that perhaps mean this month's number is too rosy?
So the reason for that was many of the furloughed workers reported being temporarily laid off or unemployed. So now that they're back to work, that number would be revised up. Hopefully they'll get back pay. So that's part of the reason why that number was low, because they were temporarily laid off, not permanently. But the numbers are up now in several industries.
Yeah, go ahead. I was going to ask you about the industries. Which industries this past month saw the best gains?
So particularly leisure and hospitality. Construction is up. Healthcare is up, which is definitely expected with an aging population. Transportation and warehousing, and I can provide specifics on those numbers if you want.
That would be great.
Okay, so employment in leisure and hospitality rose by 74,000, which is a good number. Construction increased by 52,000. We saw employment in healthcare increase by 42,000. So all of those numbers were good and kind of offset any negatives that would have been expected from the government shutdown.
It's great to see some positive numbers this month. Dr. Kristen Brody at Alabama A&M. Thanks. Have a great weekend, Doctor. Good to see you as always.
And we know that these numbers have a ripple effect in the economy. When people hear good news, they feel better. And when they feel better, they spend more, they hire more, they invest more. So tends to be that good, positive news in the economy has a real positive
effect. And you've seen that in the stock market, too.
Right. The stock market is certainly rebounding. Consumer confidence is up. I mean, that's really going to be the test here for the president, where the economy goes. But going back to your earlier point of how this plays out for the campaign, we just saw it with the president's tweet. He is going to go out there with his team and just say, we've created more jobs. I said we'd create more jobs. Jobs.
Let's see how disciplined he can be, John.
Well, listen.
We know he's been on and off topic on that one for a while. We also know he'll be in Florida this weekend, making the first trip to Mar-a-Lago, his resort down there since before Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Big deal, given the government shutdown.
Really out of the White House
since the shutdown.
Abroad, yeah.
So we know he'll be watching the big game this weekend and escaping the snow. Yeah. We hope you'll be watching the Super Bowl. You can catch President Trump's going to have an interview on Sunday as well, so we'll get his take on the game.
But Devin, you'll be watching, right?
I'll be watching
and what's
the game.
Your team, Devin? Where is your head at?
I'm all about Maroon 5, okay, guys?
Really?
I'm a Maroon 5.
You don't
I
want
will
to pick
be
a team.
there.
Way to pick a team. That was good. That was clever.
My team is Maroon 5. I'm the halftime show guy.
You're the halftime show guy.
Right.
Okay.
But we should say before we move on and wrap for the week here, our Janet Weinstein is down at the Super Bowl producing some stories for us, and she caught up with the deputy police chief of Atlanta today. It is a huge security operation there at the game. She takes us behind the scenes and caught up with the deputy chief. Take a listen.
So we're working under what's called Unified Area Command, and what you see behind me is the Area Command Center, which is better known as our Joint Operations Center. We really partner with our federal, state, and local jurisdictions to make sure that we have a comprehensive plan that not only includes the NFL sanctioned sites, but the overall security of the city. So we have several thousand people coming in every day. Sightseeing is still going on that's not even related to the Super Bowl. So we want to make sure everybody is safe when they come down, and that takes a lot of communication and a lot of planning. This is pretty much what we're going to have for game day. No credible threats. We have a very extensive intelligence group, and they're constantly giving us updates on what we need to know. It's an exciting time for our city, exciting time for our citizens and our visitors. We expect a fun day. We're going to see good weather, I think. Everybody's excited. They're going to go to the game and enjoy it. And then we'll have a few parties, I'm sure, afterwards. And then we'll go back to work on Monday.
And our thanks to Janet Weinstein for that. And we hope it's a safe game on Sunday.
Yep,
John,
absolutely.
Rams or Pats?
Oh, I don't want to go first. Mary Alice, what do you think?
I have absolutely no idea, but I do know that I made.
You guys are wimps.
Well,
I'm going for the
would say
Rams.
Pats.
I'm going the Rams, all right?
Okay, so there you go. We got split here. Now, where are you going?
Oh, no, I was going to talk about how I made a homemade salsa for the party we're watching on
my
Sunday, which is
gosh.
excellent.
Oh
And I'll post the
gosh.
recipe on Twitter.
Oh,
You do have
thanks.
good recipes. We need to do a
Talked about
recipe
them
show
on
here in the briefing
Thanksgiving.
room.
I mean,
Really?
that's the best part of Super
You
Bowl.
really, can I
It's
tell
the
you,
snacks.
the pivot, really well done here with that.
And no politics at the
No.
Super Bowl either. We
No.
cannot
We
talk
wanna
about
survive.
politics and enjoy our night. We hope you have a great weekend. Enjoy the Super Bowl. Great to have John Santucci with us, Mary Alice Parks. I'm Devin Dwyer. We'll see you next time.